Platformers starring big, furry, anthropomorphic animal characters aren't new. Even with the crowded market, one series has stuck out with its clever writing, engaging world building, and endearing characters. The first Ratchet & Clank debuted on the PS2 in 2002 to high praise, spawning over a dozen entries from sequels to spin-offs. Out of the many Ratchet & Clank characters the series has up its arsenal, which are the most moral and which are evil? Hey guys, I'm Brad with One Up Binge, and this is Ratchet & Clank Characters, Good to Evil. The gold medal of good easily goes to Clank. Originally created by the Zoni leader, Orvis, Clank is a robot who possesses a Zoni soul, giving him a personality of his own. He's incredibly intelligent, but doesn't demonstrate any sort of superiority. Clank was manufactured in the Great Clock, a factory whose primary function is to develop killing machines. Instead of becoming a killing machine himself, Clank feels a lot of guilt and sadness from seeing the more destructive machines around him being made. This caused Clank to dedicate his existence to protecting those around him, which is a big reason he ranks at the top of our list. Clank also is shown to be very friendly on a personal level, especially with his best buddy Ratchet. Whenever Ratchet jumps too quickly or hastily into battle, Clank is always there to reel him back a little bit. This leads to conflict between them, but to be fair, Clank is usually in the right, so we can't call it a personality flaw. The silver medal goes to Ratchet. Growing up as an orphan, Ratchet spent most of his early life becoming a skilled mechanic, until Clank crash-landed on his planet with a distress message from Chairman Drek. They then team up to save Nivalis. Ever since then, Ratchet & Clank have been a powerhouse, saving many from the dangers of evil on subsequent adventures. Similar to Sonic the Hedgehog, Ratchet is heroic and lighthearted, but also has a tendency to be cocky, which can land him in hot water. He cares about protecting the innocent like Clank does, but sometimes for Ratchet, that can take a backseat to his other desires. This is especially present when Ratchet is offered with financial gain or to get revenge on Captain Quark for being a fraud. But more often than not, Ratchet realizes what's actually important through Clank and knows how to course correct, which we give him credit for. He may be flawed, but Ratchet certainly has a big heart and will put his own life in danger to help others. The bronze medal of good goes to Orvis. Appearing in A Crack in Time, Orvis is the leader of the Zoni, who created not only Clank, but the Great Clock, which allows for time travel. Given that he is Clank's creator, Orvis implemented a lot of his own personality into Clank, notably his high intellect and sense of humor. Since Clank topped our list, and his personality is modeled after Orvis, it only makes sense for this Zoni to get a very high position as well. As a side note, Orvis is voiced by none other than Mario himself, Charles Martinet, who is able to make any character lovable. So this is enough for Orvis to get the bronze medal. Next, we have Sasha. She's a brave warrior and captain of the Galactic Rangers. Sasha ranks high for her dedication to fighting evil. She met Ratchet and Clank during the war in the Solana Galaxy, where they teamed up to take down Dr. Nefarious. Her commitment to her duties of protecting the universe never wavers, even when others lose hope. Sasha also develops a love interest with Ratchet, showing she has a softer side beyond sticking to her duties. There are very few bad qualities we can point out in Sasha's character, which is why she remains one of the most moral characters in the series. Next is Big Al, a computer geek at heart. Al is an ally of Ratchet & Clank who provides Clank with most of his upgrades. He's a stereotypical nerd with a strong love of vid comics and being a member of several fan clubs, most notably those of Ratchet and Captain Quark. He's friendly and lighthearted, despite being a little socially awkward and using terminology that flies over most people's heads. Al is notably scared of going into combat and dislikes disruption in his workplace, which shows he can be impatient and cowardly. Given his impeccable skills as a mechanic, we do have to say, Al is probably better valued as a support character than a playable hero, so we won't hold his preferences against him too much. Next is Talwyn Apogee. First appearing in Tools of Destruction, Talwyn is the daughter of Max Apogee, who disappeared, presumed to be dead, after an encounter with space pirates. While initially hostile toward Ratchet and Clank for infiltrating the Apogee space station, Talwyn changed her tune upon learning Ratchet is a Lombax. She develops a friendship with them, even going as far as to be a love interest for Ratchet. Talwyn is headstrong, but has a big heart. She cares a lot for Ratchet and is always fearful when he's in danger, understandably so, given the mysterious fate of her father. Her compassionate side and fearless nature are enough to rank Talwyn very high on the morality spectrum. Now we have Kronk and Zephyr. They are two very old robots. Kronk and Zephyr are very committed to their duties of protecting Talwyn, which is very commendable. people. Unfortunately, since they're old, Croc and Zephyr are senile, so they'll say some really bizarre things. Even if their mind isn't in the right place all the time, their heart certainly is, as Croc and Zephyr show a great appreciation for each other, Talwyn, and eventually Ratchet and Clank, and they also provide great comic relief. Now we have President Phoenix, also known as the Galactic President. Appearing in Up Your Arsenal, President Phoenix is one of the few characters in the Ratchet and Clank series who doesn't abuse his position of power. Instead, President Phoenix is portrayed as a noble and passionate leader who cares deeply about his people. He's also a great father, providing a lot of compassion and comfort to Sasha on several occasions. Even if he isn't the most prominent character, President Phoenix at least provides us with a little hope that not all leaders want to conquer and or destroy the universe. Next is Grimroth Raz. This character is an interesting anomaly for how drastically his inclusion changed Ratchet's backstory. Whereas Ratchet originally grew up without a father figure due to the death of Kaidan, Grimroth, or Grim for short, acted as Ratchet's adoptive father in the 2016 game and movie. Grim was a very loving father, but not a supportive one, constantly questioning Ratchet's intentions of becoming a ranger. He did, however, offer Ratchet plenty of advice and mentored him throughout his youth. Grim may not win Father of the Year, but he does show a lot of love and respect for Ratchet, even if he doesn't completely support his ambitions. Now we get to Angela Cross. Appearing in Going Commando, Angela Cross is a fellow Lombax who initially ended up on the opposing side of Ratchet and Clank. She worked for Megacorp to fix the flaws of the Protopets, which at the time would have been dangerous to release. When Megacorp rushes the release date of the Protopets, Angela disguises herself as the unknown thief and steals the experiment. Ratchet and Clank are hired to track her down, but upon realizing the errors of Megacorp's actions, all three join forces to battle the same enemy. Angela has many personality traits similar to Ratchet, most notably her fascination with gadgets and willingness to jump headfirst into danger. She has good intentions, even if her headstrong and occasional clumsiness cause her to get off on the wrong foot with Ratchet and Clank initially. Next, we have Merc and Green. They appeared in Ratchet Deadlocked. Merc and Green are part of Ratchet's Team Darkstar, who fight alongside him throughout the course of the game. Merc and Green have very different personalities, with Merc acting hardened and confident, and Green coming across as more timid, possibly suffering from PTSD. We're ranking them together, as they do demonstrate similar moral compasses, showing a great amount of loyalty to Ratchet. Now we have the Plumber, also known as the mechanic, the water worker, or the janitor, and for the sake of simplicity, we'll refer to him as the Plumber. In almost every game, this mysterious being travels around the universe to do handiwork for Ratchet and Clank for the right price. Not only does he more often than not know exactly what to do to help Ratchet and Clank in their situation, he also breaks the fourth wall, because he seems fully aware that he's a video game character. The Plumber's only negative quality is that he can be cryptic when giving information to Ratchet and Clank, leading to confusion for the main characters, if not the players. Now we have Scrunch. He's a one-eyed monkey companion to Captain Quark. Scrunch seems to be a stereotypical primate at first, but turns out to be a very useful asset to Ratchet and Clank. Clank in particular develops a bond with Scrunch, being able to speak a little bit of his language. Despite aligning himself closely with Quark, Scrunch has a lot of admiration for both Ratchet and Clank, helping them on several occasions. Granted, Scrunch needs motivation to do so, leading Clank to bribe him with bananas. If it wasn't for his association with Quark and reliant on his favorite food to do anything, we'd rank Scrunch even higher. Even with his faults, Scrunch is a moral monkey. That's it for the good, so let's get into the gray area. These are characters who aren't quite evil, but have some work to do before we can call them good. At the top of the gray sits Alistair Azimuth. He's a hard character to rank because he's done so much good and bad in one appearance. It's revealed in A Crack in Time that Alistair was close friends with Ratchet's parents back when they were still alive. However, Alistair gave Emperor Tachyon access to the Lombax's technology, resulting in not only Tachyon's rise in power, but the demise of Ratchet's parents. Alistair was subsequently banished from the Lombaxes until years later, when he encounters Ratchet again. Alistair attempts to redeem himself by acting as Ratchet's mentor and assisting him on his quest. This would be enough to put Alistair in the good category, but he unfortunately fumbles by killing Ratchet when Ratchet refuses to use the Great Clock. Clank travels back to save Ratchet and the two engage in a battle against Alistair, resulting in his defeat. Alistair once again realizes the errors of his ways and sacrifices himself to save Ratchet and Clank. So yeah, Alistair has swung back and forth from doing bad things, doing good things, and doing bad things for good reasons. Next is a hoverboarding champion of Rilgar, Skid McMarks. Skid enlisted Ratchet & Clank's help in exchange for a hoverboard and a spot in the championship race. He later joins forces with Captain Quark to be part of the Q-Force. Skid has the personality of a stereotypical skateboarder, being very relaxed and referring to others as dude or bro. Nothing wrong with that, but he's also shown to be lazy and cowardly, coming up with excuses whenever he senses work or danger. Ratchet & Clank view Skid as incompetent, but we have to say he definitely earned that stigma. He's not looking to harm anyone, but his selfish actions are enough to land him in the gray area. Rounding out the gray area is a fitness trainer for Captain Quark, Helga von Streisenbergen. Helga does everything she can to make sure the hero is physically prepared for battle. She's loud, temperamental, ignorant, and unforgiving, all of which would be understandable if it was directed at Quark. Instead, Helga gives Quark special treatment and believes Ratchet & Clank to be pansies. We're willing to believe that Quark's cowardice and high opinion of himself is likely reinforced by Helga's condescending behavior toward everyone but him. We rank Helga in the gray area because she is attempting to be useful in training Quark and battling Dr. Nefarious. With that said, her misguided faith in Quark and generally unfriendly nature lands her closer toward the bad category. With our gray area covered, let's get into darker territory. These are the bad and evil. Starting off the category, we have Captain Copernicus Leslie Quark. Quark is a renowned superhero and celebrity. He is Ratchet's wake-up call that sometimes it's better not to meet your heroes. While Quark's public persona portrays him as brave, strong, selfless, and driven by a strong sense of justice, Ratchet & Clank come to learn that those traits are, well, exactly that, a persona. In actuality, Quark is cowardly, narcissistic, moronic, and is driven by money and fame. He's basically the Billy Mitchell of the Ratchet & Clank universe, a fraudulent poser who got to be where he is by pure deception. Quark is an entertaining character who adds a lot of comedic relief to the games, but we're definitely laughing at him and not with him. Quark isn't trying to actively hurt anyone, which is why he doesn't rank lower, but since we don't see many genuine good intentions behind even his good actions, he ranks in the bad. Next, we have Lawrence, a robot who serves Dr. Nefarious. Lawrence is a typical butler, featuring a distinct British accent, and is excessively loyal to his master. With that said, Lawrence isn't above taking jabs at Dr. Nefarious, often too sarcastically for the deranged doctor to notice. Lawrence would be in the gray area if he stuck to doing chores, but sadly, Lawrence helps the Mad Doctor in, well, nefarious ways, such as knocking Quark unconscious and spying on Clank. We think Lawrence would probably be better off looking for a new line of work. Now we have Captain Romulus Slag and Rusty Pete. Captain Slag and his first mate Rusty Pete are alcoholic pirates who travel around searching for treasure and cause violence. In other words, stereotypical pirates. We're ranking them somewhat low in the bad category, as Captain Pete eventually has a change of heart and leaves his life of crime. We're also not so sure if Pete is really evil, so much as he is stupid and complacent in his captain's crimes. And that isn't enough to totally redeem them. Next, we have the unnamed Thug Leader, the head of the mercenary operation Thugs for Less. The Thug Leader is the most prominent member of the organization who has a personal gripe with Ratchet & Clank for thwarting him. The Thug Leader and his organization are motivated by money and will usually work for whoever pays them the most. The Thug Leader is also very short-tempered and likes to portray himself as menacing. Despite this, the Thug Leader does have some redeeming qualities that place him lower in the bad category. He cares a lot for his employees and hosts company picnics and pizza parties to increase their morale. He even provides Ratchet & Clank with their dietary preferred food after he captures them. All things considered, that's still not enough to outweigh the Thug Leader's dangerous influence, which is why he still lands here. Next are the newscasters Dallas Wanamaker and Juanita Alvaro. Appearing in Deadlock and the 2016 remake, they work for Vox News, hosting many different programs on the network. Juanita maintains a much more professional tone, while Dallas is more energetic and deviates from the script. What they share in common is their desire to paint Ratchet as a criminal and their lack of journalistic integrity. Dallas is very sleazy and often sexually harasses Juanita, leading her to violently lash out at him and even try to murder him. Dallas and Juanita eventually get married for ratings and try to portray themselves as an ideal couple, despite still attacking each other. They are really a match made in hell. We now have Emperor Percival Tachyon, the villain in Tools of Destruction. Tachyon is a Cragmite raised by Lombaxes who eventually became power-hungry upon learning of his origins. As a result, he built himself an empire, which grew bigger and bigger as Tachyon worked toward his ultimate goal of ruling the universe. Tachyon is a tyrannical and manipulative backstabber who attempted to kill Ratchet for standing in his way. He is very intelligent, making him a formidable foe to Ratchet & Clank. We're not ranking him any lower because he has a genuine love for animals and supposedly isn't quite as evil as other Cragmites. But that's not enough to escape a spot in the evil category. Next is a robot pop star, Courtney Gears. Courtney Gears is another character who's widely admired in the public but totally irredeemable on a personal level. She sides with Dr. Nefarious in his plan to eliminate all organic life and even attempts to kill Ratchet and turn him into a fur coat. She has a very high opinion of herself due to her fame and views everyone around her as inferior. Courtney Gears is also very manipulative and uses her fame and sexuality to trick people into thinking she's their friend when really she's using them for her own purposes. She's another reminder that not everyone lives up to their manufactured public personas. Next is Ace Hardlight. Once a noble hero in the Solana Galaxy, Ace Hardlight's persona completely shifted upon coming in contact with Gleeman Vox. Vox was running Dread Zone, a gladiator event wherein he pitted kidnapped heroes against each other in a competition to the death. Ace worked his way up in the Dread Zone to become the champion, murdering many of the other heroes along the way. You may argue that he was defending himself, but Ace seems to take genuine pleasure in murdering his fellow contestants. On top of that, Ace has an inflated ego and abuses his fellow allies that are trying to help him. The only reason Ace doesn't rank higher is because of his past as a noble hero, which was likely corrupted by Gleeman Vox's influence. Ace also tells Ratchet to not go down the same path he did once Ratchet defeats him, implying that he recognizes the error of his ways. That redeems him a little bit, but not totally. Next, we have the sweet and lovable Luna. At least, sweet and lovable is what she wants you to think. She's a henchwoman to Emperor Auto Destruct. Luna is a technomite robot who posed as a little girl to fool Ratchet and Clank into entering a trap. Luna is effective in her ruse and mocks Ratchet and Clank for falling for it, proving she takes joy out of the suffering of others. The only reason Luna doesn't rank higher is because she's a henchwoman and mostly takes orders from Auto Destruct rather than doing things herself. But she is definitely evil. Next is Clunk, an invention of Dr. Nefarious. Clunk is a robot created to assume the identity of Clank. Clunk has a similar physical appearance and the same high intelligence as Clank, but the two couldn't be more opposite in terms of morals. No surprise here, given who created Clunk. Clunk views robots as superior to organic life and takes joy in seeing his enemies get hurt or murdered. Clunk is bad news, and we're happy to see Ratchet and Clank getting some use out of him as a vacuum cleaner. Now we have Emperor Auto Destruct, the antagonist of Size Matters. Auto Destruct is a manipulative and very cunning villain who uses deception as his main weapon. He tricks Quark into believing he's his father and uses Luna to trap Ratchet and Clank. Auto Destruct's plan is to create an army of evil Ratchet clones, using his DNA as well as sap all intelligence from other life forms to become the most intellectual being in the galaxy. Whatever his motivation is cannot excuse his deceptive and dastardly actions. The Bronze Medal of Evil goes to Alonzo Drek, or as he likes to be called, Ultimate Supreme Executive Chairman Drek. This was Ratchet and Clank's very first enemy, appearing in both the original Ratchet and Clank and its remake. His two iterations make this character hard to rank, given that he was mostly being manipulated by Dr. Nefarious in the remake. In both games, Drek is portrayed as a murderous, destructive, power and money-hungry monster who will stop at nothing to accomplish his goals. He has little regard for others and uses brute force. If anything, Drek finds the pain and suffering he causes to be amusing. On top of trying to kill Ratchet and Clank, Drek comes up with an elaborate plan to pollute the planet so that people will pay his company to clean up the job. Drek is a dangerous foe, and we're glad to see Ratchet and Clank destroy him. The Silver Medal of Evil goes to Gleeman Vox, the head of Vox Industries. Gleeman Vox is a powerful and ruthless businessman who will stop at nothing to achieve money, fame, and power. He kidnaps Ratchet, along with many other superheroes, to have them fight to the death in a battle arena to increase his show ratings. Vox also abuses all his underlings and has seemingly no compassion for anyone behind his pet Slugga. He maintains a positive public persona through the use of manipulation, but anyone in Gleeman Vox's general vicinity knows what a cruel, sadistic, and horrible being he is. The only time Gleeman Vox revealed his true colors was during his death on the final episode of Vox News. Even then, he did it mostly for ratings. Maybe Gleeman Vox would be happy to receive the Silver Medal of Evil because it gives him recognition. I mean, he certainly earned it. The Gold Medal of Evil easily goes to Dr. Nefarious. While Chairman Drek was Ratchet and Clank's first enemy, and a very memorable one at that, Dr. Nefarious is Ratchet and Clank's most prominent foe, despite being introduced later. This is for good reason, as Dr. Nefarious is one of the strongest and most destructive enemies that Ratchet and Clank have ever faced. He strives to replace all organic life with machinery, viewing robots as superior. He is the most egomaniacal character in the series, basing much of his army's physical appearance off of his own. Dr. Nefarious's ego and short temper do make him a humorous villain at times, but not enough to make him less threatening or evil. He teams up with Ratchet, Clank, and Quark out of necessity in the spin-off All for One, but he returns to evil in subsequent games, so we can't really say that redeems him much. All of this is enough to grant him the Gold Medal of Evil. That about does it for our list, but before we sign off, here are some honorary medals. The Darwin Medal goes to the Thug Leader. He often stumbles over his words and is easily tricked by other characters, making him easy to conquer intellectually, if not physically. The Wrath Medal goes to Dr. Nefarious. No one seems to want to eliminate organic life as much as this guy, given how many times he's attempted it. The Gluttony Medal is awarded to Helga von Streisenbergen. Even though she's Quark's personal trainer, her girth tells us she may need one of her own. The Greed Medal is kind of tricky, considering how many of these characters are motivated by cash, or bolts. Ultimately, we had to give it to Gleeman Vox, considering the extent of his company's reach. The Pride Medal is also tricky, considering how many of the villains have inflated egos, but we're giving it to Ace Hardlight, since working his way up the ranks of Dreadzone went to his head. The Lust Medal goes to Dallas Wanamaker for his continued sexual advances on his co-host, Juanita Alvaro, even after Juanita tries to kill him. And the Sloth Medal goes to Captain Quark. While Quark has been active throughout the series, he built up his entire public persona on false heroism. Alright guys, that's the list. Let us know in the comment section if you agree with our ranking, and tell us what we should cover next. And if you need a one-up, remember to hit that notification bell and binge our Good to Evil playlist, where we break down the morality of the characters in your favorite games.